Moment, but first, Hannah's story. At first glance, Hannah Anderson looks like any other 16-year-old girl, spending time with friends, cheerleading, dancing. But behind the smiles lies a terrible truth about a week in August that changed Hannah's life forever. On a Saturday afternoon, James DiMaggio, a close family friend, picked up Hannah at cheerleading camp, saying her mother, Tina, and brother, Ethan, were waiting for her at his house. But DiMaggio had other plans, kidnapping Hannah and forcing her to go to Idaho. Using a timer, DiMaggio set his house on fire when he and Hannah were already hundreds of miles away. Authorities found 2 bodies, later identified as her mother and brother, and issued an Amber Alert across the region.
She is definitely in grave danger. He's a very dangerous man.
A week later, in a remote area of Idaho known as the River of No Return, a group of horseback riders came across DiMaggio and Hannah and felt something wasn't right.
There was just like a square peg going into a round hole. They didn't fit.
Using a tip from the horseback riders, an FBI tactical team moved in, killing DiMaggio in a shootout as Hannah watched in horror.
She was not a willing participant, and she was under extreme duress from the time she left Boulevard till the time she was recovered at Lake Moorhead, Idaho.
Hannah, anything you'd like to say?
Back home in San Diego, Hannah's family has asked for privacy, but speculation remains about Hannah's relationship with DiMaggio and what really happened during that week-long ordeal. Hannah Anderson, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Good.
You feel ready to talk about this and tell the story?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that Saturday. You were at cheerleading camp?
Yeah. My mom dropped me off, and then he came to pick me up because my mom and brother's game already finished, so they were going to meet me up there at his house was the plan.
So you get in the car. Where do you go, and at what point did you realize something's really wrong?
When we got to his house and my mom's car wasn't there.
Did he say something that lets you know he had some pretty bad plans?
When I got into the house, he handcuffed me and zip tied my feet. He told me that he was going to kidnap me and take me to Idaho, where my intention was just to carry his backpacks to the river, and that he was going to live there and then he'd get me home afterwards.
Did he say anything about where your mom and brother were?
He told me that my mom was in the garage and that Ethan was upstairs, and that the whole time that they were alive, the whole time, but I didn't know.
Did you feel in fear of your life?
Yeah, when we got into the house, after he told me the plan, he made me play Russian roulette with him, sitting on the couch. And
with a real gun?
Yeah. And when it was my turn, I started crying and was freaking out. And he said, "Do you want to play?" And I said, "No." And I started crying, and then he's like, "Okay," and he stopped.
How long do you think you were at the house?
From what I remember, about 2 or 3 hours, and then he drugged me, and I was out, and then I woke up in Idaho.
When you say he drugged you, do you know what kind of drugs?
We believe he gave me Ambien.
There was a time when you were in the house that I understand you thought you heard
Ethan.
Your brother.
Yeah, I heard him trying to yell upstairs, but he was gagged, so I couldn't do anything to help him. I was yelling his name, but I couldn't do anything.
You weren't in any position. He was restraining you.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you're in Idaho.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what happened next?
I woke up and I said, "Where's Mom and Ethan?" First thing I asked. And he said, "They're both in the garage, tied up, and my house is supposed to set on fire at 7 o'clock. And then he said, "I put signs on the garage to help them be safe from the firefighters before the fire reached the garage."
You're telling this story fully for the first time. There are a lot of graphic details, and we're not going to get into them. Did you ever feel at any of that time that you had a moment where maybe I could make a run for it?
Yeah, there was actually a lot, like the horseback riders, but he did threaten me, saying that if I ever tried to run or that if I had someone help me, that he'd kill me and them.
There came a time as this week went on when you came across these 4 hikers.
Mm-hmm. I remember hearing them come behind us the first time, and Jim would say, don't act normal. If you say something, I'm gonna have to kill them. So I'd have to sit and I'd have to just act normal. And they'd come up and they'd look at us and we would be quiet, but Jim would talk to them and then they'd left.
Well, as we now know, those hikers were suspicious. They saw an Amber Alert. They called the authorities, and the authorities found you and confronted Jim. What do you remember about that moment?
I was on the ground in front of the fire. He was trying to start a fire signaled for help. Then all of a sudden, the fire wasn't working. So I told him, I said, well, I read in a book that if you fire a gun in the air 3 times, that means SOS. So he went to fire it once, and I was watching him, and then he fired it the second time, but he like lowered it, and then a bunch of guns went off, and I looked, and he fell on the ground, and I like kind of looked over, and I was like, are you okay? And then like a bunch of like the FBI people came out telling me to get down.
When did you realize this is it, this is my rescue?
When they pulled me aside and had like a blanket around me and it was making sure I was okay and talking about how the helicopter was coming for me and stuff like that.
Coming up next, more of my conversation with Hannah as she talks about the man who kidnapped her after these messages. We're back at 7:43 and more of our exclusive interview with Hannah Anderson and her father, Brett. Hannah told us about the moment she found out that her mother, Tina, and brother, Ethan, had been killed by her abductor, family friend, Jim DiMaggio.
In the hospital, when I got there, the next night, they came in and told me that they died and that Jim was dead too. And it kind of just didn't seem real. I just thought about it for a second and then I just broke down.
I see that you post pictures of them on Instagram, and it's obvious that they're in your heart every day. How are you doing?
I miss them so much. Sometimes it's like I wait for them to get home and then they're not there.
Hard to just go on, I guess. Brett, this has been such a terrible, unspeakable ordeal. How do you think Hannah's doing?
We're getting help and talking with each other and trying to be strong and know that we need to move forward, and that's what her mother would want.
You got on social media pretty soon after you came back, and one of the questions people asked was apparently in the home they had found a series of letters between Jim and you from I think about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. Can you explain what those letters were about?
A year ago, my mom and dad split up, and me and my mom really didn't get along a year ago. So when I was having problems with her and I wouldn't have really anyone to talk about it with, me and him, instead of talking face to face, if we didn't have time, or like calling, we just write letters back and forth talking about like the situation and how to get through it.
I think this is so puzzling because all of you describe somebody that just you would never guess would do something like this. But there was that time that he said something about having a crush on you. What did he say and what did you think?
I'd always want like to bring my friend up to his house because we'd always like play games there and stuff, and he'd get really upset that it was a boy. And he told me, he said, it's not that I don't want your friends up here, it's that I don't want to see you kissing your friends or anything like that because I have a crush on you. Not a crush that, like, feeling a crush as in friend, like family, like I care about you. And it kind of seemed like really weird.
Did you kind of try to keep your distance a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. And he got upset about that and would always text me and say that I was rude and that I was trying to stay out of his life. And basically I was after that, but I couldn't because he was my dad's best friend and he was always there for my mom.
Hannah, when you think about him now, how do you feel about him? Are you angry? Are you sad?
Sick, disgusted. It's shocked, just mostly sick and angry.
There was an Amber Alert out for you. That's how the hikers put the pieces together. What would you want to say to them if you could?
That without you, I probably wouldn't be here right now. And thank you.
Would you like to meet them someday?
Yeah.
What if I told you they're here?
Right now?
Yes. I can bring them out. Would you like to meet them?
Sure.
Okay, we've got Krista and Mark John and Mike and Mary Young.
Hi.
And they really wanted to give you a hug.
Tough cooking.
Hi.
Hey, good to meet you again.
You guys are great.
I still think you're the one tough lady.
Thank you.
Oh, have a seat. We'll chat for just a second.
You're the hero in my book.
She is a hero, isn't she?
Yeah.
I see tears in your eyes, Miss Krista.
I have a friend that looks like her, and I just put myself in a grandma's place, how I would feel. And I just, we're so thrilled to see. Wow. And we brought you a hat from Idaho.
On behalf of the Cowboys of Idaho.
That's very nice.
Well, thank you for coming all this way. And most importantly to you, Hannah, thank you for trusting us with your story.
Thank you.
Part of our conversation with Hannah Anderson, you